So this panel is on how do you connect with the C-suite. And so I am here with some fellow CMOs, Randy and Lauren. You know Randy first. She just gave a wonderful presentation on content. And Lauren Mead from Time Trade. And then we have Tiffany Early from Arxon again, who is very experienced in sending packages and doing marketing programs that do engage the C-level. And so I'm excited to hear the perspectives of fellow CMOs and what they respond to, and also how they are connecting with the C-suite. So to start out, we'll keep this kind of rapid fire, right, guys? As a member of the C-suite, when you're in the marketing and buying cycle, how should B2B marketers look to engage with you, Lauren?
So I would say it's really across channels. I'm always looking. People say people don't read emails. As a marketer, I actually read a lot of emails because I'm always looking at them for inspiration in terms of what are other marketers doing and keeping my eye out for different trends. And I think the different channels and it's less about the channel and more about the content and hitting me with the right content at the right time. For your sales team, don't call me. I don't answer my phone. I know better than that. But, I'm looking for things. I listen to my peers and try and understand what are some of the trends. And then I look through the channels through content that I'm seeing online, social media, email, digital advertising and things like that. That's when it catches my eye, and that's when I start to engage with vendors. So I think touching people, even if they're not responding through different channels, that's getting, I see the brand through the email, and then when I am ready for that type of technology, it puts it on my list for when I'm ready.
Expanding on that, Randy, I'd like to hear your perspective. Where in the buying cycle should people try to connect with you?
Yeah, it's a good question. I obviously it depends, right? Which is an annoying answer, but it depends on the complexity of the solution that we're looking at, right? There's certain items that I don't even want to be involved. I trust my team, and I actually get frustrated when I'm being brought in to a non-strategic purchase because it shows that the vendor doesn't trust my team member. So I think that's one that needs to be carefully balanced. The way I like to think about it, there's a stat, someone yesterday, may have been Jen, who talked about Gartner's stat, and I think it's changed now. I don't know if it's still 6.8, but even 6.8, the way they talk about it, it's a buying group, right? Mm-hmm. And what I hate is that when reps reach out to me or companies reach out to me and they don't tie the whole thing together, right? They're trying to sell to me separately, and they're trying to sell to my, direct report separately, versus, keeping us in the loop on how conversations are going, or even worse, overstepping. And a lot of us know that through our careers when, someone goes above us to our boss and says, I'm trying to sell to this person, but I think we need to loop you in here, right? That's the worst.
Yeah, absolutely agree. We don't need more confusion inserted into our organizations by the person trying to sell to us, right? Tiffany, I'm curious on your perspective. What have you found that's been effective in connecting with the C-suite?
Yeah, so I really want to tie it into delivering value to them, right? I really try to keep it not gimmicky, try to respect their time. And, sometimes it has to be this multi-channel thing, and eventually the value catches them because that's what's top of mind for you. So I'm trying to be aware of their context, right? And understanding that you have to have a different conversation with the CMO versus the person who's responsible for implementing it.
Yeah. Kind of along those lines, how about do this, get this programs for the C-suite? Do you use them? And
I have not used them. I'll say I have an open mind. Convince me that I will be able to communicate value and respect a very busy person's time. Maybe I'll try it, but it's not going to be the first thing, especially for a C-level person.
Lauren, how about your opinion?
Yeah, so we were talking about this backstage. So I very rarely have responded to those types of things. Usually I find my time is the most valuable thing to me, and if I'm not in market for that type of solution, even if you're or not interested in what you're offering, I'm not going to take the demo just to get that thing. For me, but we do use it in our campaigns, and I think sometimes it's just that little extra to get the attention of the person to say wait a minute, they'll just read that piece of content one more time versus skimming over it, and sometimes that makes a difference. For us, we have seen good results in our direct mail, specifically using the incentive-based offers.
Randy, do you have some thoughts?
Yeah, I think it's like they're both saying, it's about figuring out what matters to that C-level individual, and it's usually, I mean, some of us still get excited by a Google Home. I mean, don't get me wrong, Google Homes are great. My kid thinks we need one in our bathroom all of a sudden, so I guess I'll never had enough. But Mark, I thought a company did well with this was Marketo recently. They did this Fearless program, right, about a year or two ago. And I was fortunate to be part of it in terms of, and it was a mix of prospects and customers. And I thought what they did well was it was about learning from each other, right? And so they connected on something that mattered to that C-level person, which is the network that they have and the people they have. So we try and do similar things like that. Like we'll try and bring more senior people into a customer advisory board, or if they're not a customer yet, we'll hint towards the potential to have them part of shaping what our platform might be.
That's great. I'd like to survey the audience real quick. We'll just raise hands. Are do this, get this programs effective or tacky? And so raise your hand if you think they're tacky. Come on, be brave. Or effective. Oh, a couple.
I think they can be effective.
Can be effective, yeah, in general. Just curious to see what the audience response is to that. Personally, I found them, to what Randy's point was, when they are at the right time and I'm already interested in something, it can make me prioritize it, spend a little bit of time with someone, but I'm already interested. And so you have to use some intent data to get me to that point. So I think one of the other questions is what medium do we use, or what type of content are C-levels interested in? And since Randy, you're the content expert and give that great presentation, we'll start with you.
Again, it'll always depend, right? It depends on what your solution is being used for. Is it something that is going to cross the eyes of that C-level individual on a regular basis? So something like a BI platform, right? Most of us would want to understand that platform, what we're going to see. We're going to need to get more into the weeds. So it needs to be a cross between thought leadership and actual product marketing content at that point. Whereas for me, sometimes it's just more of a case study that's going to help me understand how something that's not going to normally cross my desk on a day-to-day, but will be instrumental for my team. So I think it depends very much on the platform. And that's where I think, and I hit on this on my presentation, hopefully there's a takeaway for a lot of you, is we've got to be careful not to send people to this one page that has all of our content and expect them to go sifting through to find those assets. And a lot of us do that, right? We have a great resource center, we have a great blog, and we just send them there and be like, there's great content here. But I don't have time to go sifting through that, same way I don't go to Blockbuster to walk those aisles.
Absolutely. Tiffany, have you found anything effective in terms of medium for reaching the C-suite?
It tends to be this multi-channel, multi-touch, so it's like trying to get there on that spark of interest. But I also want to, you have to do your homework no matter what content and channel you're producing. Get names right, spell my name right, get my company right, So those are basics that I think sometimes it'll just fall flat no matter what channel or what type of content you're doing.
I think one example, especially using direct mail and how we've targeted the C-suite, so we identify that our buyer is not on the C-suite. However, a lot of times they're the person that's pushing their ops team or sales enablement team to look at our type of solution. So one campaign we did was actually we identified the sales ops person or sales enablement person and then the C-level salesperson in an organization. And the campaign we did with PFL had two different pieces that spoke to each other, where the sales leader got one piece, the ops person got one piece, and it was kind of like each of them got half of the set, which directed them to talk to one another, which opened up a conversation about our product and hopefully got that interest of that sales leader who said to their person, yes, I want you to go look into that solution. And that was one of the most effective campaigns we've done based on response. It was a meeting maker kit, but really trying to drive that conversation and get to multiple groups and get that C-level buy-in, but also give the authority to the person who's actually going to be the one you're engaging with.
Yeah, I think it's interesting with the whatever it's 6.8 or 9.2 people on average in a buying group to figure out who it is you actually need to incentivize, take that next step. Any advice along how we should look to, or where do you guys like to be involved in the sales process as a buyer? Early, late, middle?
I don't want to be pulled in too late because then I feel like I don't have the opportunity to kind of, so I usually look to my team to keep me in the loop through the process. And like Randy said, I think it depends on the technology. How strategic is this versus is this, something else? Oftentimes I'll say, okay, to my team, we need to do something around this area. Now you guys can go off and make recommendations and look at that technology and then just come back to me with a recommendation. But it depends on the technology and how strategic it is, or if that's an initiative I'm personally involved in versus something more tactical.
Yeah, I found that bringing in C-suite later is too late and it'll slow you down. So understanding the interplay between who's influencing and who's making the final decision. So I would suggest earlier to mid, depending on exactly the technology or just how complicated of a sales process you have.
Yeah, I agree. I think it's about giving the right. So I want to be involved from the beginning, but when I say involved, that may be simply aware, right? Because a couple things happen when we make sure that all these 6.8 people are aware. There's a lot more comfort as we get to different stages, right? Even the procurement teams. A lot of you, I heard today, have complex sales. Like, procurement's the biggest pain in the butt out of anyone, right? And if they're hearing about this at the very end, that's our biggest obstacle on our deals. So I find with my team, and there was an email that I exchanged with one of our team members who's here actually yesterday on an event where someone's trying to get us to sponsor this event. And the fact that I sent it to her and she's like, oh, this is already on my radar, there's alignment, and she doesn't feel like I'm pushing her into something she doesn't want to do. And I'm glad to hear that she's in the loop on it as well. So I think that's the key is having everyone intrigued to the right level, which is a hard balance because don't hit me with the same cadence that you're going to hit maybe the manager level.
Right. So now as marketers, I think one of the challenges that we see is our sales team always wants a C-level. So how do you get alignment between our buyer and who we need to be working with your sales team and who they should be targeting with their outreach? Anyone?
I mean, I've been really pushing our sales team and our BDR group to look at that, like the 6.8 people. And if you're single threaded, like we say, we handed you a lead. This is one person. Now we've seen interest in this account. It's now your job to go find all those other people and start to work with them, make sure we have them represented in the database, and then engage marketing on campaigns around them. Because, as you look, Sirius has changed the way they look at the waterfall because, you can't just look at every lead as an individual. You have to look at the account in B2B.
And it's coming down to understanding the personas and how they influence the decision. So like our AEs, they are the ones that are like kind of building the relationship with the C-level, but then we have our sales engineers that are building the relationship with the implementation managers. And on the front lines, our BDRs have their playbooks, and they have to shift how they speak if they're trying to get a C-level person on the phone versus a manager.
I think the most effective that I get hit with is when it's C to C. So when it's a C-level individual reaching out to me to check in and see how it's going, and they throw something nice. So I'll give you a great example. We recently purchased Looker in the last year to power a lot of our analytics in Uberflip. And this was like just in the months leading up to them being acquired. And I thought about this after they were acquired because it was the CMO who reached out to me. And I was like, Uberflip's cool, we're big. We're not that big. I was like, the CMO had time to reach out to me. And I thought about that after to think, how are they accomplishing that at scale? Because that to me is the true connection when you get into that pure network group again. Because there's a different degree of I feel responsible to reply.
That's a great example. And that beat me to my last question. Who's doing it well, and what have you seen that's been effective?
I'll jump in on this one. So it was also taking into consideration like external events. So for my team, we were rolling into 2019 planning at the September, October timeframe last year, and that's when we attended an ancillary event for Dreamforce. and we like bought our entire ABM stack, or tech stack, like PFL, demand base, Engagio, we Drift added in. But it was the right message at the right time, and it was understanding more than just like digital signals, but like, hey, there's gonna be Dreamforce, right? And then Drift happened to not communicate like, oh, personalize your website with these cool chatbots, get meetings automatically scheduled for your BDRs. I was like, yes, please, I will go outside of my buying schedule to add this to my stack.
I think Engagio, they were actually one of the companies that like inspired me to do a direct mail. So they did a multi-touch where they sent one thing to who they had identified was probably the buyer, and then they actually sent in the same package things that they like put names on and said, hand this to Lauren, hand this to this person. And it created a conversation on our team. I think they've also done a great job of pushing content at relevant times. So before I went out to Dreamforce, they saw I was speaking, they sent me like a travel kit and, you know, offered to reach out and have the meeting there. So they did a nice job of personalizing, making it relevant, and hitting it at the right times with a lot of different stakeholders.
That's great. That's awesome. I'd like to say thanks to our panelists here and all of our presenters today. Thank you so much for being here. And I'd also like to specifically thank our customers. You guys are the ones that make this all happen, along with our sponsors, Oracle, Uberflip, Sales Intel, and Couch & Associates. So thank you all for being here. Mario, come on out and give you the instructions for lunch this afternoon, because I don't know exactly how that's going to work. So thank you.